Hello, welcome to another episode of the Raw Report. This is A&R News. I'm Ryan Jackson-Saw. Now, we're very lucky to have Mark Aldridge come back onto the show, and he's got another bombshell to drop on us. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show.
It is indeed a bombshell, and I don't think it's unexpected for people in politics to think this sort of stuff would happen. But I think the public generally would be pretty perturbed that the major parties continue to try and undermine democracy, and in doing that, take away voters' rights, which is a real shame.
Right. So exactly what is happening? Do you want to just flesh it out and explain to the listeners?
Well, obviously, I've been around a long time. My interest has been the health of the electoral system, and the problems like compulsory voting, corrupt backroom deals, all sorts of things that undermine our vote. And now that we're in this, I suppose, pivotal moment in Australian history where enough people out there are considering change that we could actually, annihilate the two-party system and restore democracy to the true sense of what it should be. In other words, actual community members that are well known and good for the people, that going into Parliament to represent their best interests. I've joined a new party, Australian Federation Party, which is party politics kind of sucks. I'll just be totally honest. And the concept of our party is that we provide, people like myself within the party provide the essential services to the candidates. In other words, if the candidates want to know about something in particular, they come to us. And so we provide that backup information. So if they're elected to Parliament, we can guide them through what they have to do. They can make decisions for the public themselves, and we're there to help them, on topics of concern, whether it be environment. We have environmentalists. If it's law or constitution, they probably come to me. If it's Aboriginal affairs, come to me, or animal welfare, that kind of thing. So we're just a backup organisation for independence. And what's happened is the electoral law in this country, as I've spoken about many times, is written by the major two parties. So it's very corrupt in that respect. And it's there to empower the two-party system. And that's why they call it a two-party system. It is, every country in the world has the same problem, trying to get rid of those that control the lives of the people of their nation, aren't necessarily people that we would like to elect. Or, what I mean, I suppose, is that we have to preference the major parties, and then they have a counting system which points the vote towards them. And therefore, getting rid of them and changing electoral law and re-empowering democracy for the people is hard to achieve. And what's just happened is the major two parties obviously are very aware that the general public have had enough of them, and that there's a very strong emphasis now on putting the major parties last in the lower house to remove them from Parliament once and for all. Mm-hmm. So what they are doing is they've changed the electoral law once again, and with the sole intention of removing alternate choices. In other words, they're attacking the minor parties and removing them from their ability to run in this federal election. And I'm offended by it, and I've been on.
So just to back up real quick, sorry, Mark. Exactly how are they doing that? What is the mechanism they're exploiting there?
Well, the mechanism is interesting, and I think people will get this. Like, we used to have 500 members of a political party to be a party. The Labor and Liberal parties don't have to do that. They are called parliamentary parties. In other words, if I was in Parliament now, I could create what's called a parliamentary party overnight, basically, and I would be able to run candidates. But if you're an independent person or a small group of independent people that wish to create a political party, you used to have to put forward 500 members. And of course, our party and various other parties have done that, and we've complied, and we've been registered to run in the federal election. Late last year, they changed the rules to 1,500 members, and the costs much higher. Now, that is not the end of the world. It's a deliberate attempt to get rid of smaller parties, because gaining membership, if you're not well known, is not particularly easy. You hit the streets, you try and get people to sign up. But they've gone beyond that now, and so they came to. I'll give you, for instance, they came to our party and said, "You're a registered political party. We're actually a group of parties. In other words, there's about 6 parties sucked up into one. under AFP, and we'll be working with other parties in the election. We've all agreed to work together for once to do something great. Now, new people trying to register are getting the runaround. So there's about 5 or 6 new political parties that came. They're online now. You've seen them all. They're calling themselves political parties. They have a right to call themselves political parties, but they cannot run. And they're not able to get registered. And then what we're doing is a lot of those people are coming forward to us. So I suppose we're a conglomerate of parties. When they changed it to 1,500, that sounds easy because we've got 5,000 members. It's not really a problem. So, but what they're doing is they're restricting how many members you can put in. So as a party, we're only allowed to submit 1,650. Now we take this seriously. So we go onto the electoral roll. We make sure all 1,650 are on the electoral roll. We make sure they've all signed a membership agreement, which is kind of it's somewhat of a legal binding contract to be members of the party. Obviously, they can resign any time, but and so we have effectively submitted 1,650 members, and that should be really a simple process. But what happened is we submitted those back in December, early December last year, and the Electoral Commission just don't get back to you. And, they used to get back to you and talk to you and say, look, we've done it, or we need 10 more, can you give us another 50, or whatever it might be, to make sure we comply. And they're not doing that. In other words, we're being kept in the dark. So in January, we received this letter saying, we've checked your 1,650. We believe 60 were members of another party, and that's obvious because we've fucked up other parties. And the law says that's fine. You ring these people and check who they want to be with. The AEC aren't doing that. They're just writing them off. So what they're doing is they're writing us down and other parties down until we get to about 1,550, 1,530. I think we were 1,575 members. Okay, now that's enough, isn't it? 1,500. So what they're then doing, instead of ringing them all up, they're saying they're underfunded, undermanned, understaffed. And I know that. The AEC, they don't want to give them too much funds. I don't know why. I mean, it's pivotal for Australian democracy to have Australian Election Commission that know what they're doing and have the resources to do it properly, particularly when corruption can come up during an election campaign. So they then said, we'll ring 38 people. And if a couple of people say they're not sure they're with the party or they can't remember or they can't contact, they're writing off our application.
So even if they don't contact them, so maybe someone's away camping for a week and then they'll just write them off.
Well, even better, you could quite easily have people go sign up for the party that do it deliberately to be able to undermine your application process. I mean, this is, can you imagine the situation? I mean, they ring you and say, we're thinking of deregistering because you've only got 1,551 of your 1,650. Now, let me just say something about all this. This isn't law. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you could only put 1,650. There's nothing in the Constitution or the electoral law that says we're only going to ring 38 people and judge your entirety of your application on that. Right. And so we said, I got dragged in and they said, as a party, can you get involved in the legal aspects of this, which is something I've done before, as you know. And so I wrote to the commissioner and said, look, here's the law. If 60 people are with or used to be with another party, well, ring them up. And if you don't want to ring them up, we'll supply another 60. 3 people have died. I mean, we have the numbers. So under Section 102 of the Act, we supplied 3,000 for them. Okay. And they weren't going to accept that. And so there was legal arguments. But what I'm getting down to, the basis of this is we'll get through this. But a lot of parties haven't. They don't have the background knowledge of electoral law. They don't have the understanding. And so they're being deregistered. And you've lost 22 minor parties. Quite a lot of those in the last, since December, January, February of this year. Sorry, January, February of this year. You've lost 12 or 14. Political parties have been around for a long time. Okay. So it's limiting your choice in an election. And it's leaving those people in those parties, the money they've raised, their candidates, their membership disenfranchised from the political system, which is unacceptable in Australia. And as much as
I'm very concerned with the fact that they've only got a buffer of 150 people, and if they're looking for any excuses to get rid of 151, then they can completely get rid of that party running. Is that
That's
right?
right, and that's unacceptable. It's not legislated. I don't know where they get this. As I wrote to them, I said, look, I understand. You know, you're understaffed, you're undermanned. You should bring every person. That's what you're there for. You've had the application since December. I mean, surely you have the staff. If you don't have the staff, that's your problem, not really ours. I mean, if you're only going to ring 38 people and then do some sort of basis based on ABS data that says, you know, what if there was only that 38? What if there were another 38 and it's fine? And my opinion is that the major parties are using the electoral office and putting pressure on the electoral office to get rid of free choice in this country. Now, they've already done that with your vote. They play all sorts of dodgy practices, which I've talked about in the past. And now they're looking to take away your free choice in an election. Now, this is a federal election. It's a very important part of democracy. It's the cornerstone of this nation. I mean, seriously, we are overdue to have some genuine grassroots candidates representing us in Parliament, okay? And the only disadvantage of that for the country is if you were to vote in a whole lot of people from the community into Parliament, they won't have an understanding of how Parliament works in the background, you know, debating legislation, looking through legislation, finding faults and everything else. That's what I'm there to do. That's what most of our party, people in our party have been around for a couple of decades. We're there to assist them. So in other words, you know, the concept is you would vote for a genuine grassroots person that's always cared for you. And then we come along and help them get through the processes. In fact, I don't want to do that forever either. I'm happy to go into Parliament as an advisor for a while. But I've got a life to live now. I've done my campaigning as a candidate. I know what's wrong with the country. And I mean, we can all spruik what the hell's wrong with this country and nation. And I've been spruiking for 20 years. The problem is the electoral system, because if you can't vote out bad people, then the system's broken. And if the political parties should have no right to have any say in what goes on. They shouldn't handle postal ballots. They shouldn't write the law. It should be an independent authority, one would think.
Just a quick question, Mark. Sorry to interrupt. Now, there's been a big change that maybe a lot of people haven't heard about yet, is that unvaccinated people apparently cannot go and vote in the polling booths. They have to do mail-in ballots. Is that correct?
I'm not sure that is correct. We have discussed that with the AEC. The AEC haven't concreted that position at this stage. I mean, if they were to do that, I'd be very, very concerned. The postal ballot movement electorally for the last 20 years has risen quite considerably. And I've been in the highest courts and exposed, you know, tens of thousands, if not more, missing ballot papers when that happens. And I do fear, because what people don't understand is, you know, if the media pick up on, oh my God, 70,000 people's names went missing, or 25,000 ballot papers went missing in South Australia, for instance, say, which happened before, they think, well, that doesn't really matter when there's a few million voters, but it does, because some seats are won by 10 votes or 50 votes. Actually, there's been seats that have been won by 1 vote. So what we've got to remember here is that every vote counts. It's considerably important that we all vote consciously and with a purpose. And I think that purpose should be to rid Australian politics of the two-party system, so that we can get in there and restore democratic processes and re-empower the people to control the direction of their nation. And this isn't just Australia's problem. This is a global problem. If you can go to any country in the world, you'll see that your voting is restricted to 2 people or 2 parties or 2 systems. And generally, they're just like two wings of one bird. I mean, really, the differences between Labor and Liberal is just the promises they break. I mean, really, there's no concerted effort from any of them to protect your nation's interests. In fact, one would think that they should be wearing, you know, mobile Exxon signs and all the corporations that fund them, just so we know who sponsors them and who they're actually working for, because they're not working for us anymore, is my opinion. And
there seems to be the parties that aren't taking big subsidies from the corporations to run for them. You don't really hear about them because they don't have the advertising capital to basically put their faces everywhere. So people basically see the faces. That's the people taking the money.
It is. I think personally that the politics has fallen apart, and people in the last 2 years, if not before. I mean, 2019 we had about 40% of people not vote for Labor and Liberal as a primary vote. Right? Fairly big cut for the voting system. But about 10% were informal. And I think that those informal voters really just didn't know what to do, or had given up on the value of their vote, and they attended and just put a line through, or whatever it might have been. But as you were reflecting on, the postal ballot application system's really open to fraud, and one of the ways they do that is that they'll send out an application to you that says, "Would you like to vote in the election? Stay home. It's safer. COVID." You know, you can imagine it's going to be easy for them to do, and then you send your application back. It's not going back to the AEC, and quite often it's a dodgy reply paid address or a dodgy label reply paid address, and it could go back to one of the major parties. Now, those parties run and maintain a copy of the electoral roll that's a bit different than what you might expect. They have researched over many years, they've done polls, they've run polls, they have a fair idea, for instance, sake that I would never vote for the major parties. They know that I would not vote for Labor, for instance, like in South Australia was voting state-based. So if I was to put my application through them and they received it, may they decide not to forward that to the Electoral Commission? You know, that's the kind of corruption I'm talking about. And if it doesn't go to the Electoral Commission, then I don't realise I'm sitting there waiting for my ballot papers, so they come in time, I miss out on my vote. And they don't mind, because that's a vote that's not for them anyway. And so that's why they should have play no part in the process of an election. And any electoral material ought to come directly from the AEC and be returned directly to the AEC, and that's not always the case. So it means that voters out there have a lot of options, but the first option is one, to make sure they're enrolled to vote. There's been problems with the roll. They must take their vote.
Sorry, drop again. I think it'd be really good to examine some of your party's policies. What are the main platforms that you're running on?
Oh, wow. There's so many. I mean, really, we've got a website up that's reasonably nice, actually, to look at, but obviously we need to define that much better, which means we need to look at defining the actual policies that we have, from the good old-fashioned one paragraph that makes you smile to more detail, which we're in the middle of doing. So the new site will be up in about a week, and that'll probably be much more informative than what I can be. I think electoral reform's major on the agenda. The restoration of our freedoms, not that they need to be restored necessarily, the freedoms are there, they need to be upheld. I think we're also looking at a legislative, they were looking originally at legislative Bill of Rights, so I think I've converted them to a constitutional Bill of Rights, because I think most people don't know what the rules and regulations should be. They don't know any of this. I mean, you've got people running around the net, good people like Rod from Gap and others that, like myself, that have been arguing the Constitution's powerful, we should use it. But I think we're probably at a pivotal moment where a constitutional Bill of Rights that's overarching. In other words,
that's long overdue, isn't it? We really
you create
a long time ago.
You create a Bill of Rights, you attach it to the Constitution so no one can play with it. I mean, you know, Victoria's got a Bill of Rights, but the government can change it at a whim. So we don't want that.
That's right. It's kind of lost its power, hasn't it? The Constitution of Australia. It's always been validated by all the overlaying rules and regulations. And
the Constitution is really powerful. It's just expensive to uphold. I mean, I've been to the High Court, and I've got an application sitting on the bench now in the High Court for free speech, and it just sits there. And the courts, you sort of rely on the courts being very transparent and clear, and sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. I mean, if you read the findings of a case, you read the version that the courts want you to see. I'm not being rude, but that's what you read. You don't read the complete process of the arguments on each side necessarily. So I think a constitutional Bill of Rights that's attached to the Constitution and then taught in the schools would be relevant, and it must be such a piece of legislation that it overcomes the problems we see in legislation now. In other words, if a piece of legislation has something offensive in it, it instantly becomes invalid because of that Bill of Rights. Otherwise, the way forward is quite extensive. In the last 2 years since COVID came out, while everyone's had their eyes on the Constitution and our right to free medical choices and freedom of speech and those sorts of things that have been under attack in the last 2 years, there's been so much legislative change I can't keep up, and I've tried to. And there's been 134 changes to the piece of legislation. Every time you change one piece of legislation, it inadvertently affects another. The whole entire legal landscape in Australia has changed in the last 2 years, and we don't even know what to do. And most legislative change doesn't come out of Parliament as a benefit for the people. It comes out of Parliament as a result of lobby groups like the UN, outside forces, big tech, those sorts of things. So anything they write these days is to
I
appease
just
the
want to ask
master.
about that. Well, how much influence do you think that these international influences have on our policymakers at the moment?
Well, they have a massive effect on our policy makers. They just don't have a massive effect on protecting us. So, for instance, say you get a UN obligation, for instance, say the UN now, are obviously having a big play. I've got a friend in the UN that told me in I think October, November 19, that he was writing the manifesto for the new pandemic. This is way before the pandemic existed. So, and then he said that's going to every global country in the world. So all of a sudden, we suddenly see, for the first time in history, every single country doing exactly the same thing, exactly the same time, undermining exactly the same rights, using aggression against their own people. Everything is exactly mimicked in every country. Now, if that is not a global influence, nothing is. And if that's a UN global influence, we don't need that in our country. And we saw immediately, as you would have noticed, our own health experts being sacked and bringing in quasi experts that just agreed with a particular narrative. And if anyone came out that was an expert and said anything, suddenly they're banned from social media and they're banned from the media and they're banned from big tech across the board. But there was a control. It was all about control, and it's about control now. And
we know that doctors lost their licenses because of all this. And nurses as well, and other professionals.
Yeah, we've got a lot of those guys on board the party. We've got the lady running, Kathy, for our Senate in South Australia that I've chosen thus far, is a nurse of 30 years. We have cardiologists, we have police, we have lawyers, we have people that have walked away from the system and been out of the system for a long time because they're no longer willing to comply with bullshit. And they're the sorts of people I want to see as our candidates. They're the sorts of people that have put everything on the line to fight for our freedoms, or at least stand up for their own, which is quite important enough. And I'm looking forward to backing them. That's what I love. I love the thought once that my face is going to be out there on posters, and I'm not going to get any police intimidation for the first election ever because they can't come looking for me. And that's some of the sad things that happen. And you're seeing that in the state elections. It's frightening. I mean, I talked to a whole heap of players in the last 2 weeks to do an overview of the state election, and they've been intimidated. They've had their parties shut down. They have been, they're trying to take away free choice now. They've taken away free choice. They're now taking away those people, or trying to undermine those people who would normally stand for them, using tactics that should be illegal and should be a crime. I mean, it should be a crime to go after minor political parties. It's nothing to do with the government as to how many are running. It doesn't matter how big the voting papers become. That's a problem for the public to decide. That's our decision. We decide who runs the place.
Absolutely.
And the major parties have decided who your candidates are for a long, long time. So have the media. So if you think about grassroots politics, what happens if I put my hand up to be a candidate for the Labor Party, for instance, say, now they're not going to choose me, right? They're never going to choose me because I'm going to question. So they choose people that don't question, and then they put them up as candidates, and then they run campaigns based on getting them in, not campaigns on honesty or what they intend to do. And then that person gets elected and does what the party tells them. Now, that is not representative democracy at all. It hasn't worked for a long time. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't exist. And representative democracy, right, it used to be some bloke from the area you knew. And he knew that if he went into Parliament and started screwing you over, not only might you visit his house, right, but you would sack him. You'd sack him the next election and put someone better in. And that's how politics is meant to work. But we've been sacking one party and then electing the other party, and they come in and do the same crap to us as we're going over and over and over. And it's a system that's empowered the two parties. And the two parties, as to what those candidates do in respect of representing their party, is not determined by the party itself. It's outside sources. So we're not a democracy, mate. We can't be, because we have no say in what happens in this country, and we need to take back that say. So, the UN...
Do you think that this election year is actually going to see? Well, I've been expecting the rise of independents, despite all the sabotage and all the techniques they're using against them. People just want to see like a bit of a change.
I think 60% of the public, or more, 60% of the public will vote against the two-party system. Now, there's there'll be big movements online to try and make you invalidate your vote. In other words, don't vote, it's a corrupt system, it's a corporate system. There's 100 arguments. I get it. I do get it. But we have to vote. And secondly, we need to police it a little bit. We need to police we need to get hold of that piece of paper. We need to fill it in properly. We need to police where it goes, and we need to keep an eye on the election. And millions of Australians go into the electoral commission, or hundreds of thousands are employed short term to run the election, so they can't get to all of them. So we have an opportunity right now to rid ourselves of the two-party system. And you're right. I don't care who gets in. You know, I'd like it to be some of our guys, because then I get to help them, and I've always wanted to help change our country. So it'd be very important to me to get a position with one of our candidates in Parliament. But if I don't, that's fine. I'm willing. I've always been willing to advise anybody that wants to go into politics on what I've learned in 24 years, and I've taken it very seriously for 24 years. I've always believed I was here for a purpose. I've always believed I was here to, you know, reinvigorate democracy and the many, many things I see going wrong constantly. And maybe this role is the role for me. I don't know. But everybody out there needs to take it really, really seriously. And I think you're right. I think 60% will vote away from the major parties. We need to be concerned that you're trying to break the back of an ingrained, corrupt system, and it's not going to break easily. So even if we get those votes, we need to be watching everything going on. We need to seriously look at the count. We need people in the polling booths to watch that counting. I am frightened, because if someone like me can have police out to intimidate me because I'm not doing a good job in a lower house seat at some stage, can you imagine how corrupt that system is, and how hard it is going to be to break that system?
Yeah.
And if we can't break it, completely, but we mess it up a lot by putting in genuine voices, those voices aren't corrupted yet. There's no doubt that you could put 50 new people into Parliament, and eventually the big guys will get to them with money and everything else. But then we can get rid of them. It takes time to corrupt people, you know. And so we need to break the system first, and then tidy up, I suppose, from there, the right people doing the right things. And I think if you'd ever read the Constitution and the arguments and debate that led up to the creation of the Constitution, my God, were they good people? Well, you know, you had they worked together. They weren't party members. They were individual people from the community, intelligent, individual, compassionate people that designed this Constitution to protect us. And they did such a good job. And where they failed was simply they just would never have seen into the future to realise that this two-party system will come along and dismantle all their work. And every section of the Constitution that says until government otherwise provides, they'll provide rubbish. Okay, that's all they did wrong. And we need to get in there. We need to restore democracy, and then upgrade the Constitution, if nothing else, by way of asking the people what they'd like to see and voting upon it, which is how the Constitution is amended.
That's something that we haven't seen much of, is just general referendums. They're certainly supposed to go to the people and ask them if they want to make any changes to the Constitution or override the Constitution in any way. With the border closures, obviously that was a direct breach of the Constitution. We weren't asked.
I don't think that we've had any control over our nation for a hell of a long time, and the only way we get it back is to get rid of the two parties. We can't just have a handful of people in there getting beaten around by the media on behalf of, and big tech on behalf of the government. We need to get them all out. We can achieve it. It's not hard to achieve. It's a simple vote, but you can imagine counting night. Like they're not gonna. It's going to be a primary vote issue. So, for instance, say we might be able to all work together with our preferences, as we are going to, and on preferences get in. But we need the primary vote. We need the primary vote to not be Liberal or Labor. We need 60% of the vote or 50% of the vote to go to someone in a seat, a lower house seat that's not Labor or Liberal. Before we get taken seriously. And I think we can do that, but we have to stand our ground. And we have to educate. We need to talk to our parents and grandparents and those people that are not watching information like this, not seeing the sideline of smaller social media places where freedom of speech is allowed. And we need to talk to them and say, look, for the first time, please put this person first, could you? And
absolutely. We're a few weeks away from the election, or not too far away from it now, and this is the time for people to start having those conversations. to
It
sit down
is.
and say, right, let's do something a bit different this year. We don't think that the parties are representing us anymore, and they need a bit of a shake-up. You know, let's give them a bit of hell this election.
I think so. The state election's looking pretty sad. I meant to do an overview. I think you should do the overview with me. That'd be fun. It'll be pretty timely. But the state elections, they've just frightened everyone away from running. They're so brutal here in South Australia. So there's about, I don't know, it's about 7 or 8, maybe 12 seats where you've got no choice but Labor, Liberal, Green. My God, what the hell do you do there? You tear up your ballot paper and say nothing, or you decide which is the lesser of two evils. I'm sick of I'm sick of having to decide the lesser of two evils when you do preference deals, or as a party or as a candidate, which I've been several times. And we have to enter what's called a ticket. In other words, we have to go around and try and deal with these people. And it's appalling. And it should be video. It should be live video of you when you approach people like Labor or Liberal. You know, I met AJP the other day, and Animal Justice Party. Now, you know me, I'm huge in animal welfare. It's part of my life. I live with hundreds of animals. I get called out day or night to go and rescue animals, and then I'm talking to them, and it's just a game. It's about preferencing a certain party for some preference return in the hope of getting one voice in the upper house, instead of standing up for what the hell you believe in and preferencing people based on policy that would be similar. So, you get someone like AJP, which is all meant to be animal welfare. I'm sorry to bag them out, but then they wouldn't preference me as an independent, even though I'm the person that would hold similar ideals to them, maybe not as extreme, but similar ideals. And one would think that you would do it on that basis. The only big movement now is that most people are really interested in what the hell is going to happen to their freedoms. And so most of the parties are what we call freedom-based. But of course, you need to be a bit more than just freedom-based to get the Conservative voters online. So that's why I'm hoping AFP will do that, because we have, a bit of a mixed bag in the background. Peter Harris, our party leader, we could call him. There's arguments. I don't want to be the party leader. So Peter helped set up the federal Family First Party. So he has very, very strong family values, and I think that's important. And we've got Glenn O'Rourke. Glenn's been around forever, annoying the shit out of me for 10 years. We both have, trying to find some way of uniting parties. So Glenn's really had it good. He ran the Katter Party, did other things with other parties over the years. And so he has a very good understanding how the political works in the background. Peter Harris has dealt with prime ministers and everybody else. So he knows how to skip his way around, the federal parliament. So these are the types of people in our party which we need, because, obviously if we were to succeed in this massive change and we become a part of it, whether we're just a few handful of the voices that go in there, or whether our party actually got enough lower house seats to be a contender against the major parties, that's the kind of thing that you need. You need a bit of a conservative. You need to be able to say, we care for this, we care for the environment, we care for, it's not just freedom-based. It's not
it's
just
very interesting. A lot of people who never would have dreamed to run in politics have just heard the call. They feel that it's absolutely necessary now to stand up, and they don't have a choice. And so we're going to have all these voices going into the lower and the upper house that come from the grassroots, come from the people, and haven't been separated and know what's going on. So that's going to create a massive cultural change.
I think it could be the most amazing thing for our country, but not just our country. If we were to pull this off, if people were to take seriously what we're talking about here and put that into effect, it's a global thing. It's a global thing, because, electoral corruption's been around since the beginning of time. And that's because we allow the people that are the most to gain from structural biases to write electoral law, and it needs to change on a national basis. I mean, I'd love to see Australia lead the way. I'd love to see the whole world going, oh my God, Australia's just kicked out this corrupt, corporatised political system and elected people from their community to determine the future of their country. I mean, what an amazing thing. I mean, it would be, I could get tears after all I've been through to see that. Sorry, mate. But it would be the greatest thing to be involved in. And it would make all of the years of stress and bullshit I've been through just worth it, because this is so important. And I still see people running around that going, don't vote, it's a shit system. Well, then you're just empowering those people that don't make an informed vote, that just go in and go, well, my mum and dad said to vote Labor, I've always voted Labor, I'm going to vote Labor. They're still out there. The entrenched people are still out there. They don't watch social media. They don't watch big tech. They don't look at what's going on. They pick up the advertiser or the newspaper in their town. They, yes.
Take a moment.
Oh, what a sicko I am. I get so emotional about this because it's things that have been my whole life. I mean, it's only been 20-something years, but it just feels like it takes your life over. But, Ken, those people are out there and we can't get to all of them, but we should try and do that. We should try and do that without calling them sheep or calling them names.
That's right.
There's no more. The division
further,
is, there is not a skerrick of room for division right now. Not a skerrick of room. We need to be much bigger than that. We need to sit down with people like my mum and dad are staunch Labor. I would die to go in there and go, well, your Labor Party's gone and I'm now a power broker in the Parliament because of this. I'm sorry, it was just be hilarious. But then,
well, you're right. The Australian people, we're all family. And even if we have disagreements with each other, if we know that we love each other and we're all connected, then it's okay to have disagreements. We don't have to divide each other over those things.
I think we all got to see that in Camp Epic. You were there.
Yeah, that's right.
Weren't you? Yeah,
I mean, there's a bit of division.
Wasn't it
all together still? Yeah.
Everybody at Camp Epic in Canberra. The thing I brought out of it, I know there was a lot of division at a political level there. That's fine. Everyone's very passionate about what they believe in. But the love and compassion and the coming together and the unity I saw there gave me hope. I think that if it's not for that, it was beautiful. I've never been hugged so many times. I'm obviously superhuman because I haven't been jabbed. Don't wear a mask. I hugged people there every day. I shared food with them. We shared drinks out of the same class. We did all those things that we normally do at a backyard barbecue. It was like they were all my family. And here I am. I'm alive. Shouldn't I be COVID struck down with COVID?
No, you should be dead and gone.
It was just so interesting. The Parliament, it went through Parliament. All these people in Parliament got sick and we didn't. We've been fed lies for a long time. We're still being fed lies. I'm hoping that this new war stuff doesn't become divisional. I think everybody should just accept immediate lie and take from what they like and not push anything. I'd hate to see this. I think they're running this agenda deliberately to re-divide. And I think we're united at the moment, must remain united. And we must have a common goal. And the common goal is very simple. Fill in your ballot paper properly. Make sure you see it go in a ballot box. Make sure you know your vote's going to count. And vote against the two-party system. And I think we can do it. And wow, can you imagine Australia without it? I mean, it'll be glorious. And then think carefully about the poor suckers that get voted in because they're going to get hammered by the media. They're going to get hammered by the Parliament. They're going to get police intimidation. They're going to get everything. So this is kind of like a war, and I think it feels more like a war. I mean, wars go on for years. Pandemics last a few months. This is a war. This is the end of a war. This is the pivotal moment where the big corporate sector want to take over every aspect of your life. They want to legislate every aspect of your life. They want to take away your freedoms. They want to take away your money, your access to your money if they want to. They want to control you completely. And this is the moment we need to be free. And that freedom means we have to break away from entrenched rubbish systems like the two-party system and do what we did at Camp Epic and just be kind and loving to each other, supportive of each other. And I think it's pivotal to watch what's happening. I'm normally there for emergencies, as you know, and I couldn't get over to Queensland and New South Wales because of what we're doing right now, which is so important. But look at the leaders of our country. What are they doing? They've done nothing. They've abandoned the people.
I think the true leaders are among the crowds right now. They're not sitting in buildings. The true leaders are the ones who are standing up with megaphones and speaking to their own people. They're the real leaders, and that's the new leader now.
That's the leadership, and there is good leadership. And sadly, I've never tried to be a leader. I'm kind of one of those guys that just come walk alongside me with your arm around me, politically. Maybe that's been my biggest fault. I never wanted to be some sort of leader. I just wanted to be a representative, which means I should be able to sit down there and talk to you, put my arm around you and talk about what your problems are and try and help you solve them, which is something I've done all my life. And to do that at a political level would be fantastic. And I'm saying, I've got to say this with AFP. I've got to give a plug. I sat around, we had a couple of drinks in the AFP hierarchy, and I was so anti, politics at a party level. And I came away from there, came home to my wife, and I said, "Oh my God, this is real. This is real people, and the candidates approaching us are real people, and the parties we're going to work with. We're working with IMOP, we're working with GAP, we're working with a variety of parties to make sure our preferences don't dwindle off to the major parties, and they're good people, all of them. You know, there'd be some. You know, if we sat and debated one topic, we'd probably have some slight differences. But the difference of wanting to unite the people and represent the people and enforce democracy and enforce the rights and liberties and back them up, the constitutional rights and liberties, which is all we have at the moment, so we may as well use them, are all the same. There's no difference between any of us. And I've had another call today that another party hasn't made it, so I'll be speaking to them. But somehow I've got to select, personally, sure they're doing this just to get to me, I've got to select the candidates for Adelaide. I've got so many, and it's going to be awkward because, you know, so many parties had really good candidates to run on their own grounds, and I think it's a shame they can't. And it puts pressure on me to have to choose candidates. And I said, do we have to only have one? Can't we have two? I don't understand why a political party can't run two candidates in each seat. I mean, maybe we'll just do that. I don't see a problem with it because, you know, it really is about the person. I mean, we're supplying a platform at AFP, but generally it's the person. So if you are in one of these shitty seats in South Australia where you've only got Labor, Liberal, Greens, go and look at the people. But wow, you know, I feel so sorry for those people, those electorates, that you have no other choice. Because there's certain parties I detest that would leave me having to vote I didn't like anyway.
Well, in those situations, is it possible for them to get out the black texture and cross off all three names? Isn't that a right that we have in this country?
It is. It means your vote doesn't count at all. My concern is, if I'm allowed to be political, personal political, I've been in South Australia for a long time, so I've kind of got a fair idea. And I've been involved in things like the Mulligan inquiry, you know, protecting children. I've been in water inquiries. I've been in all sorts. And personally speaking, Labor disgrace. I hate them so much that I would really hate anything that elected them back in. That's me. Okay, that's me. I'm not telling other people that. I don't want to tell you how to vote. That's not what I do. But I couldn't stand them getting in. So I'd have to put a vote in and put Liberals first. I was in one of those seats because I had that passion to never see Labor back in politics in South Australia for anything more than bearing the Mulligan inquiry. You know, an inquiry that shows what happened to children, and they bury it for 85 years. Not good enough. Did the Liberals stand up against it? No. So are either of them any better? No. But I'm always going to pasteurize them. Yeah. And we have to have them. And but there are a lot of people still running in South Australia. There's some reasonable choices. We can at least kick the major parties a little bit, but the federal election is going to be the one where we might see massive change, and I think that'll trickle down because you know, not being rude to party politicians, but you know, some of those people in those major parties, we've seen them jump ship to our side, and they didn't join. All of them didn't join because they were corrupt. Of course, some did, you know, but some of them might have joined and thought they could change the system from within, you know. So if we were to annihilate the two-party system and it left a handful of their candidates, I reckon their candidates might jump ship.
They might jump ship. So. Yeah, they might get some more Craig Kellys out of there.
Well, there is, you know, there's a couple of candidates in Adelaide that are just nice people. I've known them for years and years. I think if they were given, it's like when there's a fire or flood. Can I explain this to people out there? They probably don't get it. I hear there's a fire happening somewhere, right? And I'm animal rescue and I help out. So the first thing I do is jump in my fucking car and drive straight there, right? Because I need to know what's needed. And then I'd call out for people and say, look, wow, this person's lost their house. We need to get a caravan up here. The hay's all gone in these paddocks. There's animals having no feed. I need hay. And I'd call out, and the next day it was all here at my home delivered. And we'd go and deliver it. That's because people need a platform to do something. They need just an ability to do it. You know what I mean? I think all Australians are like that. I think they're all fantastic. I think, you know, like in the floods over there, the government's nowhere to be seen. They're useless as usual. The media are reporting poorly about what's really needed. The people calling out to the media are getting ignored, but the people are in there doing it. You know, they're in there doing it, and Australian people are amazing, and we need to get in there like that. Like this is a disaster. The two-party system is an unnatural disaster in our country that's destroying our country in every aspect of it, and we need to combine together and get the hell rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then stand up. And if you see someone standing up and you think they're good, vote for them. And let's change the rules so you don't have to vote. For them. In other words, if there's 5 people running in your area and you don't like to, why should your vote have to count for them? That's a two-party broken system, preferential system. We did take care of that.
And I still stand by the fact that we should just black text to the names. If there's no one in our area that we want to vote for, no confidence, scrub them all off. Put it in
I do get that. Don't worry, I'm not far off that. I'm not far off it in my mind. I think I'm not sure what my area's got yet. I've sort of been too busy trying to get my head around doing some sort of video to explain to people who's running. And if there is no one, that's not a bad idea because it drops the primary vote and you don't have a say.
Absolutely.
I am confused on that one. And when there's only 4 choices, like there's a couple of them where it's 3 choices and one other, and then the one other is a new name that's been set up by people from the Labour Party, and I think, is this to...
They're trying to catch the extra votes, yeah.
Well, maybe not too. Maybe some people seriously jump ship, but I doubt it. So I suppose this conversation has been very federal-based. State-based is no different. It would be lovely to have much more choices, but if you see an independent person having a go, reward them. And one thing to remember too, your vote's worth about $3, $2.76, $2.85, whatever it may be. Give that to some bloke that's standing up from the community. So if he doesn't quite make it this time, and I'm sure they will,
give him a leg up for next time.
Give him a leg up for next time and give him some inspiration to try again. Very important.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you very much. Now, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but did you want to share some of your contact details or the party details if people can have a look?
Okay, look, Australian Federation Party, you can just punch in. Wow, I'm terrible at this. I should have written down in front of me. Australian Federation Party, just Google it. There's 2 websites. One will come up that looks really interactive and cool, and it says not ready yet. And there's a button on that one to click back to the one that's still working. We're going to be very interactive, so we're going to bring in this like a voting app, and so that when our elected members are looking at legislation, they can punch it in, and you can be enrolled to do it. And it's like a AEC enrolment, and you can go and vote on that or put your stuff forward. And of course, we don't have anything to vote on, so we're going to be bringing that out and have some interesting questions for people to ask and take the piss out of the electoral system of that. We have, obviously, we're still finalising candidates, so there's any candidates out there in South Australia or any of the other states that would like to be involved. If you're from a party that's been deregistered, please get in touch with the website. Is still operational, so you can go there and fill in the candidate application and send it to us. So we can still do that at this stage. Our AEC stuff appears to be sorted, but I'm ready to appeal to the courts if anything goes astray. So we've got that ready, and I think that's one of the reasons that we'll be left alone now. They realise that we are in the right place, so that's important. And then go look at our policy directives, which are very basic. I'm sure that's all you want to read anyway. But it's all coming. So the next website will be up within a week, and there'll be the phone apps as well. So you better go on there and look at intensive animal welfare, intensive environment, and all those types of things. So we're fairly probably, I don't know, I like the word centralist, but can't use that anymore. You're meant to be left or right, aren't you?
I'm a centrist myself. I think that's the sensible place to be. It's all about balance, isn't it? It's like
it is.
If things swing too far either way, then we got a bit of a problem.
I think actually, I've always thought that if we were to achieve what we're about to achieve, there'll be a little bit of chaos, but a little bit of chaos isn't bad.
No, chaos can be very invigorating. Yeah.
It can. Okay. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone watches this and really considers who they vote for. And look, I'm here to back any of you minor parties. As long as you're freedom-based, as long as you're common sense-based, we'll be here to support you, and we can all work together to overcome this two-party political system and restore democracy in our country. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure. And make sure you check out the webpage and go give some support to the parties and all the independents who are running in this election. Thank you again, Mark, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.
All right, thank you, mate. Pleasure.